Ladies and gentlemen, an Oregon judge just sided with President Trump. Judge denies, this is Oregon Live, judge denies Oregon Attorney General's motion to restrict federal police actions. Let's read. A federal judge on Friday denied a request by Oregon's Attorney General to restrict tactics used by federal officers in Portland, finding the state lacked legal standing, and presented scant evidence to support allegations that the officers were illegally snatching people off city streets. U.S. District Judge Michael W. Mosman issued his ruling on the 58th consecutive day of protests against police violence and systemic racism. Which, by the way, unfortunately, and I say this with all due respect, because I know there are people who truly believe that 58 straight days of protest will lead to an end or alleviate systemic racism. I do believe that there is systemic racism that exists. Ask Kamala Harris. Ask Val Demings, a police chief, former police chief in Florida. Congresswoman Demings has presided over a police department that had a history of excessive force. Now, you had Kamala Harris who withheld exculpatory evidence from people. So, from people on trial. So it's like, of course there are systemic injustices. You should probably ask also Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton. Because when she made that super predator comment, she was trying to defend the crime bill. So Democrats are interesting. But here, quote, because it was not shown it is vindicating an interest that is specific to the state itself, I find the state of Oregon lacks standing here and therefore deny its request for a temporary restraining order. All right. I think that this is a Pyrrhic victory for President Trump. I do not agree with federal officers being sent, and I will explain why. If the mayor of the city of Portland, the state of Oregon, and the governor of the state of Oregon, if Democrats it's a democratic machine. If Democrats want to see tremendous property damage and loss and mayhem and chaos, that's their decision. If like I keep trying to say, if your neighbor, if Bob, your neighbor, is taking a giant dump in his lawn, you don't call in air support or call the police. Oh my God, he's taking a dump on his lawn. It's like, you just say, honey, Bob is taking a giant crap on his lawn. Again, you don't see, I understand this. There's already an understanding that President Trump is okay with protests. He's not okay with $1.4 billion in property damage by one insurance estimate throughout the country. The state of Minnesota asked for $500 million, denied by President Trump. Gee, if it was so peaceful, why did they want $500 million? Now you have Attorney General Ellen Rosenblum had urged the judge to bar federal officers from engaging in unconstitutional police state-type tactics, alleging they have violated the rights of protesters to exercise free expression and assembly. On H.A. Goodman's other channel, I explained this is not true. The ACLU has given, there's an article, The Rights of Protestors. Protesters do not, and I say this with all due respect, because I know that there are good people who really feel in their heart, they go and protest, they're exercising their First Amendment right. And I understand. I'm not saying this with disrespect. There should never be a clash between citizens and law enforcement or federal officers. Inherent in there being a clash, unfortunately, if it's a peaceful protest and law enforcement officials ended abruptly without giving any warning, and the citizens are not blocking traffic or they're not causing any damage, and they just ended abruptly for no reason, and they're infringing upon the constitutional rights of law-abiding citizens, and they're not allowing protests to take place, then you sue the city or the state or the law enforcement officials. You do not have these clashes that only help President Trump. The polls are dreadfully wrong. They're even worse than they were in 2016, they were horrible in 2016. The only reason Clinton got the popular vote was because Gary Johnson got 4.5 million votes. If Kanye West continues and gets on the ballot in California and New York, Trump will get the popular vote. He's going to get the Electoral College. You have a Politico article, oh yeah, the suburbs. The suburbs. You think the suburbs? You think people in the suburbs want statues being torn down and $1.4 billion in property damage and the police to be defunded? I think these Donald Trump suburban horror show, Politico, these polls they're not only off, they're just pure public relations press releases. That's it. That's it. At the end of the day, in 2016, with possibly the first female president, 53% of white women voted for Trump. So they were trying to say, like, oh my goodness, he's losing suburbs, he's losing. That's not the case. In fact, every protest that when you see these clashes, that's more votes for Trump. So, people who are clashing with police, they might as well be working for the Republican Party. And I say that with all due respect, and it's not a disrespect, not a diss to anybody. But I don't think they understand why President Trump or how he became president. Wasn't racism. Had nothing to do with racism. Nothing. He said a couple things early on in his campaign that were crude and rude. That's true. Democrats have said the same things. They've said the same things, and they've done worse than him on the issue of race. Worse. You know who started the birther myth, and it was bad when President Trump was talking about it? Clinton. When she spread a photo of President Obama in African attire. This is according to The Guardian. Okay? You don't have to look far. Clinton utilized a 3 a.m. ad. The phone ringing, well, that already happened while she was Secretary of State. She didn't answer the phone. But she painted President Obama as somebody trying to break into a house. Those are the wonderful Democrats that are sitting by and saying, gosh, that's just too bad how Trump is an authoritarian. This doesn't help the Democratic Party. And Biden isn't going to be nominated. It's going to be Hillary Clinton again, and she'll lose again. There's a lot more support for President Trump than people think. A lot more support. But let's just continue. So, the Attorney General and her lawyers referenced 2 incidents last week by men in camouflage fatigues. The reason I don't think President Trump should send federal officers, but the reason they're there is because the city and state government in Portland and Oregon are not doing their job. They're complicit in a whole bunch. But getting back to what I was saying, there shouldn't be any clashes. The ACLU has an article. I talked about that in H.A. Goodman's other channel. If you have a situation where you feel law enforcement, if you're a protester, you feel law enforcement has been unfair to you, you don't throw things at them and you don't go there are people who are walking up and yelling and then they get sprayed in the face and then they get interviewed by publications. Do you see what these people were doing to me? You shouldn't even be there. You don't have the right at that point. Sorry. I know it sounds like you're fighting the system and you can have Rage Against the Machine in the background and you feel like you're really going up against the man and the system. You're not. You're helping President Trump. I'm saying this as a Trump supporter. I'm voting for President Trump. I want Americans home from never-ending counterinsurgency conflicts that your political party, the Democratic Party, wants. Democrats care more about what you say on Twitter than Americans being brought home. The same left-leaning people who were against American empire. They never... Have you ever heard AOC say, or anyone say, I want to bring American soldiers home from never-ending counterinsurgency conflicts where we've just left them there forever. The wonderful, enlightened liberals say, well, it's just like Germany and Japan. No, it's not. No, it's not. President Trump is bringing home Americans. He's setting the groundwork to bring home Americans, and he's already removed them from hotspots within regions of the world we shouldn't be in anymore. That's why he won. He didn't win because of racism. Democrats have he speaks to the most base emotions of people. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. Democrats don't know who Trump is. They've created another Trump. The actual president is going to very likely get the popular vote. Well, he'll definitely get the Electoral College. He could get the popular vote depending on how. If Kanye West gets on the ballot in California and New York, he'll get the popular vote. And he'll defeat Clinton again. They're not going with Biden. That's another thing with the polls. Like my last segment it was a live stream last night. The polls are dreadfully off. But again, like the mindset of the Democratic Party appeals to authority. Now you have an appeal to authority, and the judge in Oregon said, quote, "It has presented no evidence of any official orders or policies that has presented no evidence that these allegedly illegal seizures are widespread practice. The judge wrote, despite the broad language in the complaint, Oregon has shown at most that this type of seizure has happened twice. Okay, so State Attorney General. So again, here, this is what I'm trying to say in reference. Quote, the injury that the state asserts is entirely conjectural. First, the state candidly admits that it does not have a shred of evidence that counter-protesters have ever anywhere kidnapped a protester or anyone associated with protests, he wrote. Second, the asserted interest rests on an utterly implausible inference. The state's reasoning is that counter-protesters, once they learn of seizures of protesters by federal agents, will dress up like police and go out on private missions to kidnap protesters. This despite the fact that such kidnappings are Measure 11 felonies in Oregon, punishable by mandatory minimum sentences of up to 70 to 90 months in prison. So here's the issue. And like, the far left doesn't listen to me. The people protesting don't watch this channel. So, but they're helping Trump. They don't get it. It's like if you have adrenaline and you have testosterone and you have energy and you have idealism and then don't waste it on throwing things at law enforcement officials or federal officers. Even if you think you're fighting this evil empire, you're not battling or changing anything. I explain it. And then you have Donald Trump's suburban horror show. If current numbers hold, the Republican Party will suffer its worst defeat in suburbs in decades. Yeah, that's what they were saying in 2016. Because Trump is boorish and he's so uncouth and he's so horrible. People don't want, like, why do you think firearms sales have skyrocketed? Because people with families, like myself, have firearms to protect their families. That's why, I had a Second Amendment channel. But you can still see there's some Second Amendment uploads on H.A. Goodman's other channel. In fact, they're my Bill of Rights documentary channel. I have a 500 Smith & Wesson, and anyway, AK-47 that I have. So it doesn't look. The point is, at a certain age, when you're in your 20s, and you've taken a couple courses at UC Berkeley, and everyone in your Facebook group and Instagram, and all the you look at Rose Twitter as like the GOP. If you look at Rose Twitter and you're like, they're so conservative, and you're the type of person who's like, there's something has to happen in this country. Trump is an authoritarian. You're helping him. I'm telling you, you're helping him. Every clash that takes place is thousands of votes for Trump. Thousands, because he says law and order. He stands for law and order, President Trump. You can disagree with that. You could say he worked with Russia, but he didn't. You could say he's committed crimes, but he didn't. They didn't impeach him on that. The worst he's done is he's rude. That's it. He's rude. We had record low unemployment prior to the pandemic, and 5 Democratic-run states account for over half of the lives lost. So, but a judge in Oregon sided with Trump. So the Trumpists won that one also. But it's like the furthest left is Trump's like the best friend of President Trump. If you're throwing things at police and you're clashing in Seattle or Portland or anywhere, and it gets on Fox News, but it doesn't get on MSNBC or CNN. Gee, I wonder why. You can say all you could complain or say all you like. Oh my God, these federal officers are doing this. You shouldn't be there. You shouldn't be there. At a certain point, you have to leave. Even if they don't tell you to leave, even if you don't hear the message, you hear the message when you see the officers in camouflage and fatigues and or riot gear. I mean, it sounds like you're accepting defeat, but you're not, because then you can file a lawsuit and say, you know what, these people were unfair to us, but you're not doing anything but helping President Trump. But anyway, the far left doesn't watch this channel. Maybe 4 years ago, perhaps, but these clashes shouldn't even happen. At a certain point, you have to. Your rights are only protected if it's peaceful. Once, they've tried their best. They said, "Oh, Lafayette Square. Oh my God, where were the cell phone videos?" I want to know why. Because not everything was peaceful, and that church in D.C. was had property damage from being set on fire. So it's like they tried desperately to make Trump seem like this authoritarian, this despot. Here, the Washington Post. How the Trump administration tried to explain clearing protesters from Lafayette Square. They have the right to do this. Why is it like... It's funny. Trump does anything that any other president would do. And suddenly it's like, how dare he? How can he do this? Because he's the president. And if he wants a photo op, you can clear protesters. That's fine. And then they can come back. Not that big of a deal. Not that big of a deal. Okay? Or if I'm wrong and it's against the law, then you could sue, or then you could try to impeach Trump over it. Just like if you want to tear down statues, you have to, vote on it. See, you can't, Democrats are funny. They're like, oh, well, we feel this way, so it's going to happen. It's like, no, and you're going to lose on November 3rd. Hillary Clinton 2020 is a reality. Get ready for 8 years of Trump. I stated that, and I wrote that in the Huffington Post in 2017. And the article's below. And in my Times of Israel article, Hillary Clinton, not Biden, will be nominee. I'm on my way to making the biggest political call of all time. Because guess what? They have 2 rounds of voting. Do you think anyone's going to care when the superdelegates in the round 2 and the pledged delegates in round 1 jettison Biden because they don't want an exhumed body going up against Trump? Biden is so boring that paint watches him dry. So it's like he'd be the first cadaver as president. He looks like a deceased person that got Botox and plastic surgery. Okay, Biden looks like he has all the charisma of Rip Van Winkle's nightmares. When you look at Biden, you age. He looks like Tales from the Crypt that got a makeover with a suit and tie and they talk about, it's really funny too, they've convinced themselves that Trump has the cognitive problem, which is hilarious. Meanwhile, Biden is like running for Senate. He's running for Senate. He stated that, called somebody a lying, dog-faced person. Talked about cornflakes. Let's see. He wants the cure to be worse than the problem. He literally stated that. I will never forget, and this is Democrats, they don't believe Tara Reid, but they believe, they're the biggest hypocrites on the planet. Biden actually made a gesture, an inappropriate gesture with his hand, like, how do I explain this in a YouTube guideline friendly? A stroking gesture with his hand on MSNBC. Okay. And the female host was laughing, like nervously, but I'm telling you, like and then of course he said the "you ain't" comment with Charlemagne, and then just recently Charlemagne said, he needs to shut the F up. So This is a charade that only I've been calling. And then when they flip the script yet again, and they have Clinton again, I not only will have made the biggest political call, and subscribe to H.A. Goodman's other channel also, because I did a lot of work on explaining what's going on H.A. Goodman's other channel, even more so than this channel, pertaining to Clinton becoming nominee. But people will realize they don't have a political party. They have a political machine. Their political machine is just like Tammany Hall in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Just like Boss Tweed and party bosses. They have legal graft just like, over 100 years ago. And it's not a party based on meritocracy. The Republicans are. I'm not a Republican. I'm just voting for President Trump because I want a president who signs an executive order combating anti-Semitism, which is running rampant on college campuses. I want a president who signs the First Step Act. I want a president who gives more money to historically black colleges and universities than President Obama did. This is a fact that nobody knows. Nobody knows this fact, but it is 100% true. He just signed legislation also continuing funding and renewing funding, $255 million to historically black, 250 or 255 million to historically black colleges and universities. We had record low unemployment. Pandemic's not Trump's fault. They could blame. Media can do what it likes. Media did not stop Trump. The intelligence community did not stop Trump. If you had media and James Comey and Clinton all converging to stop Trump and they failed, you think Tales from the Crypt Biden's going to do it? No. They're going to go with Hillary. And she's literally the only chance they have. Look, Hillary Clinton, not a fan. Committed many, you can't have top secret intelligence on servers outside of the country. That's not just bizarre, that's not legal, but that's another story. We can go on. Libya, the whole thing. Never had a foreign policy decision that ever worked out. Never really had any major decision that ever worked out, but aside from that, Clinton is the only chance they have. She has the gravitas. She has what they consider experience. She's able to stand up to President Trump. She's not going to be able to defeat him in a debate, but she'll do enough to where media will say, my God, she won. She has charisma, a lot more than Biden. Clinton has infinitely more charisma than Biden. A pencil has more charisma than Biden. But Clinton has charisma. She has the gravitas. She has what they would consider experience, which, okay, she has experience, controversies for decades, but she was senator, secretary of state. I mean, she has the experience, the charisma, the gravitas. She can win if President Trump's basically running against himself. If he falls for traps, like I think Portland is a trap. Even if the judge sided with him, I don't think federal officers should be there right before an election. But anyway, Clinton has a chance to win. She won't win because Trump will win. And I will have made the biggest political call of all time. But she's actually the best candidate that they have. I'm not being generous here. It's a sad reality. That's how bad the Democratic Party is. There's no other candidate that they had, especially not Biden, that is even close to Clinton in terms of like a candidate who can win. She has the money. She has Hollywood. She has media. Everyone fawns over her. She has Hulu. She has Howard Stern. Oh my God, Howard Stern. Oh my God, he loves her. Oh my God. That's an interesting personality. Howard Stern could never have made it in this day and age. Twitter and the far left would have eviscerated him and silenced him immediately. He was the most edgy, offensive. He was awesome. In the 80s and the 90s, I would listen to him in the morning. He was amazing because he was so hilarious. And it was never really, he was never mean-spirited, but he was extremely offensive. And that's what made him so hilarious, that he was so rude and offensive and funny. But he would never get away with that. And now he loves all the people who would have persecuted him. But that's what the Democratic Party does. Bernie Sanders is also an example. Used to love Bernie. Now Bernie's a walking doormat who actually helped foment the whole nonsense regarding Trump-Russia. And then they went back and said that he was a part of a Russian plot too. Anyway, give me your thoughts below. Subscribe to H.A. Goodman's other channel. Hillary Clinton's going to be nominee. She's going to lose to President Trump. President Trump is going to go 8 years. The current paradigm of politics on the left will be completely steamrolled, decimated, obliterated when President Trump wins again. And it'll be partly because he's a great president, because he's doing things that, like going after people who went after him, that's something Bernie would never do. Bernie would say, "Oh, thank you, can I have another?" Trump goes after Comey and Strzok and McCabe and all of them with Durham and William Barr. But a big part of why Trump will be reelected is not just because he's a great president, because of the maniacal, hysterical, rabid, apoplectic, fuming, seething left and Democratic Party. Give me your thoughts below. Subscribe to H.A. Goodman's other channel. I have a great segment that actually explains exactly what the ACLU. The ACLU themselves stated that protesters don't have a right to throw things at law enforcement officials. Like, when it gets to that point, it's actually the state and the law enforcement official that actually has the law on their side. The citizen does not have the law on their side when they're trying to insult or throw things at the police. That's actually what the ACLU said. And I explained that on H.A. Goodman's other channel. Give me your thoughts below if you want to support my voice long term. Ladies and gentlemen, to my Patreons, thank you so very much. My Patreon is below in the pinned comment and description. Thanks, everybody. Oh, and check out my live streams this evening.